The Ducks game was frustrating.
Yeah, well, actually both of these games were frustrating in some sense because I think the Sharks
Sure.
outplayed both teams. But at least this one ended in a win. So
And yeah, I mean, it would have been nice to get regulation, but I love the play that we scored on, so I'll take it. And Murray on the analyst desk is hard to watch.
yeah, I didn't I don't ever pay attention to that stuff. So all right, let me see if this posted to Twitter.
But I only got the third period of this game.
Is that when you got up?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, the first period was good. Second period was sloppy, and the Sharks are better than the Kings, so they're also better than the Ducks, but that's harder to argue. I miss you, hockeystats.ca. All right, so where am I going to get my stuff from? Let's see. Natural Stat Trick. That's where we're going. Okay. Oh, that's preseason. I can fix that. Okay. So let me just open these up and then we can kick off. Wow. Sharks outplayed both of these teams so badly. All right, so I think what we'll do is we'll just we've already done our season predictions. We only have the 2 games, so I think we'll just jump into talking about both the games and then I guess maybe talk about what how we feel about the first couple of games in the sense that like what do these games mean for this season? If that makes sense.
Makes sense to me.
All right. I'm not sure we're going to have any viewers because I think the other podcast that does their nightly recap, Teal Town USA After Dark, is on. So I suspect it's just going to be you and me talking to the darkness, but that's fine.
Well, that's how I assume it always is.
Right. Okay. Did we post? Double check this. Yeah. All right. Any special topics you want to make sure we touch on?
Not really. I'm kind of the opinion right now to expand our discussion about the first 20 games to just be like, yeah, our first 20 is basically our preseason right now.
Yeah, I think that's a fair topic to talk about for sure. I think the other thing in terms of that is to talk about the players who seem to be sort of stepping forward and the ones that may not be stepping forward yet that are getting played. Like Couture was just an example. Like in game 1, I had issues with. I didn't think Pavs did very well. I don't think. I think Jumbo looked slow, and Goodrow was basically invisible.
Yeah.
I didn't get to pay as much attention to this game as I did the previous one, and it's good to see Couture sort of show up on the scoreboard with the winning goal. But I didn't get the sense that he was much more visible this game either.
Well, okay, so yeah, we've got stuff to talk about, but like for the 20 game subject, I would just think, what would be the good use of these first 20 games? Because we need to establish how we're going to go to a Stanley Cup and practice that method for the 60 games following.
Yeah.
How do we get there?
Yeah. Okay. let's do this. Let me just note that we are starting. Okay. Let me get one last sip of beer.
Oof. Yeah, the Anaheim. Just looking at the recaps, not even like watching the replays, just looking at the timeline. It's like, oh no, this game.
Oh, that was your. I mean, that was your stereotypical Sharks loss.
Yeah.
You know, dominate the shit out of the other team and have bad goalie play sink you. That's basically my summary on that one. All right, so let's do this. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Hello and welcome to Circling the Cup, the San Jose Sharks podcast that you love to listen to on Saturday mornings, I guess, because that's when we always go live, or at least the podcast download goes live. We of course record on Friday night, so if you're joining us after a Sharks win, hopefully you are feeling as joyous as we are. This week, without Alex, I am your host, Ben, and with me, as always, from beautiful sunny Sweden, is Colin. Say hello, Colin.
Yeah, we are not in the sunny time of the year.
What? I was assured it is always sunny in Sweden.
No, that's you're thinking of a different show.
Am I thinking of Philadelphia?
Possibly, yeah.
Oh, well, in that vein, Philadelphia beat the hell out of Vegas tonight, so perhaps it's true.
Wow. I don't want to thank Philadelphia for anything, but good job, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Philly. So we are live, the first podcast of the regular season of 2018-2019. The Sharks have played the first two games in an 82-game marathon stretch. Last week, Colin and Alex and I got together to talk about how we felt this season would go, and also what we thought we'd see across the first 10 or 20 games. And Colin, I think it's fair to say that with a 1-1 start, and we'll talk about each of the games in detail, we're not shocked about what we've seen so far, right?
Well, okay, no, not shocked. I'm a little confused, but not shocked.
Kind of like Brent Burns in the defensive zone, would you say, Colin?
We can get to Burns. Like that, we can talk about that.
So the Sharks finished up prior to this Wednesday a pretty not great preseason, both in terms of the way they structured their preparation for the season. Not great because guys didn't get a lot of chance to play together like they probably should have. And it's arguable whether right now the team is even playing the right combination of players even. But the two games we had this week, we had identical Sharks lineups in both games. So let's just kind of start by talking about the lines we've seen. So our top line has been Timo Meier, Joe Pavelski, Joe Thornton. Our second line has been Logan Couture and Tomas Hertl and my gosh, I'm forgetting his name, Kevin Labanc, who just scored an amazing goal to win Game 2. Our third line has been an interesting mix. I don't think we expected, in the sense that Evander Kane has been playing on the third line with Antti Suomela and Jonas Donskoi. And the suboptimal fourth line that the Sharks have been rolling out there has been Barclay Goodrow, and at center of all things, Melker Karlsson sort of also doing his impression of a center, and Marcus Sorensen. So they've got a couple guys on the bench who could be playing on this fourth line, particularly Rourke Chartier, who I think I'd prefer to see playing actual center for that line, but maybe we'll see him sooner rather than later. The defense pairs, though, are what we expected, right? We've seen Brent Burns playing alongside Joakim Ryan. We've seen Mark-Edward Vlasic playing next to the newcomer, Erik Karlsson. And we've seen the bottom pairing be Justin Braun and Brendan Dillon, not Dylan DeMello, the dearly departed. So, 2 games with those folks on the ice, 1 win, 1 loss. And so I thought what we would do is just look at each of the games and talk about how we felt those lines were doing in each of the games, and whether we see some adjustments coming, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does.
All right, let's do that. So let's jump into the Ducks game. So I actually got to go to the Ducks game.
Oh,
The
right.
opening
You
game
were
of the
the
season.
albatross of this one. That's right.
Well, it turns out, though, they're only allowed to win when you and I go to the game together, Colin. So unfortunately, this means that you need to move back from Stockholm, and I'm not allowed to move to Eugene in November as the plan goes, apparently.
Or you just commute.
Yeah, except it's not that the Sharks played poorly and lost to the Anaheim not-so-mighty Ducks.
Well, a shark played poorly.
Right. Yeah. So this was a game that the Sharks largely dominated from start to finish when we talk about the things that typically predict a win. And what I mean by that is the Sharks had a huge edge in this game with all four lines, really, in terms of shots and shot attempts, really. If you look at the shot attempt chart for this game, there's not a single point in this game after the first 2 minutes in which the Ducks held an edge in that sense. And after 2 periods, the Sharks were sort of unlucky to be tied 2-2. This is a game that the Sharks could have been up 4-0, except for a couple of mistakes. Now, you probably won't be surprised to find out which players made those mistakes. Am I right, Colin?
Well, I have a higher opinion of one of the players I think you're going to slam, so you can go ahead.
Excuse me, slam? I don't slam players. I gently criticize.
You're going to point out the statistical reality of their performance. And
all right, so let's just admit straight off that this is a game Martin Jones would like to have back.
Yeah.
Can we say that?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, at one point at this game, I think his save percentage was somewhere in the 600s. Needless to say, that's not good. I'm not going to say that every goal in this game was Martin Jones's fault. A couple of them occurred on the penalty kill, and the penalty kill was not good in this game. And I'll return to that topic.
Hey Ben.
Yeah.
How many is a couple?
2?
Wasn't it 3?
No, they were on the penalty kill 3 times, and they gave up 2 goals on the penalty kill. I'm pretty sure there was also an empty net goal, so maybe that's what you're thinking of.
Right.
Yeah. So one of those, a guy you're going to hear me probably complain about a lot this season lost his guy. That's Brent Burns. One of the even strength goals the Sharks gave up was due to a turnover that Brent Burns coughed up in the neutral zone. Hey, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
But even on that one, when you have a guy going in on your goalie, one-on-one, you'd like to see your goalie do a better job against, the shot than Jones did in that position. Which is to say, I think Jones was garbage in the Ducks game. So
there we go.
There we go. Colin, feel free to rebut me.
I mean, I can't. The numbers basically say that as well. I chalk this up as Jones kind of not showing up for a game, which isn't how you want to start a season, but it happens, and I'll subscribe to the statistical fallacy of, get your bad games out now.
Well, I mean, on the bright side, we've seen a lot of bad games from Martin Jones in the preseason and the season.
There you go. He's shaking them all out.
So, Colin, something I've seen some other folks in the community say, and I'm not sure how you feel about it, is that Jones is not a very good goalie in the regular season, period.
So,
what do you think about that?
If you set up dolls around your house and speak in different voices, that's not actually creating a community. That's just you speaking to yourself.
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying that I'm the only one who says that?
No. I've actually seen I've seen such wild theories before. Unfortunately, the stats also sort of back that up. To me, Jones is definitely a player who approaches different games differently and isn't always trying to put forth some maximum effort for a win. And as long as he shows up for the playoffs, I don't really have that many things to complain about. but we need to make it to the playoffs. And I we're gonna get there. It's the state we're gonna get there, and I would like to see Jones have like a higher baseline. But I'm also fine with a player trying to like save themselves, save their athleticism for the games or the events that really require everything.
But is that really how it works? Like, is it really that Jones is just going to can or is just half-assing his way through the regular season, and then when the playoffs arrive, has somehow like another level that he gets to? Like, it's an intriguing theory, but I'm not sure.
So I think of it in terms of focus. You can be performing a task that you're really good at, that you're interested in, but your focus can waver because the situation, the context in which you're doing that action is not requiring all of your focus. So it's not like deliberately half-assing. It's thinking about whether or not you left the oven on while you're driving the race car. Like, maybe there's times when you just don't have that laser focus and the results are less, because within the situation, a lesser result isn't necessarily a catastrophe. It's acceptable. It's acceptable collateral damage. And I think the league is littered with these sorts of players. I think there are players who treat a lot of games in the regular season as something they've got to get through. And then you see them in the playoffs and they're just like a completely different person.
Yeah, I guess how I feel about that is I'm okay if that's true in game like 60 or 61.
Yeah.
In a long season. I'm not so sure how I feel about that if that's what we're already seeing in game 1 or 2. And here's I guess ultimately what I want to say about Martin Jones, which is, in the Stanley Cup season, Jones was not bad in the regular season, right? He had a .918 save percentage that is somewhat above sort of what you would call an average goalie. Average goalie in this league, I think it wavers from year to year, but you're looking for a .916, .917 from a guy to be able to win consistently, right? The following year, he was only at a .912, and last year he was only at a .915. And so, 2 of the 3 years he's been with the Sharks, he's been literally, by definition, a below average goalie in the regular season. And I'll agree that in the playoffs, he's been something else, mostly. Right, certainly in the Stanley Cup year he was, but man, what we saw in the Ducks game was absolutely concerning. Given that, to me anyway, again, there's an argument to be made that maybe he's just half-assing it, but you don't want to see that from a guy who's making the money he makes. No. First of all,
so the thing I'll say in total agreement on the Ducks games is there were goals in that game where you just think, you should absolutely just be in front of that. Forget quick love, forget lightning like reflexes. That should have just hit you in the chest.
Yeah, or you had your stick down to fend it off. Yeah. Like the Burns turnover that turned into a one-on-one. You want your goalie to have that angle and have his 5-hole closed, right? Yeah. I think I don't remember if it was the third or fourth goal that was the backhander from the circle with a guy on the shooter, and Jones wasn't on the post. He didn't have the angle.
Second, I think, the Raquel goal.
Yeah, and that's just a terrible, terrible goal to give up.
Yeah. You imagine, to be really reductive and sort of, jerky about it, you expect for, that much money, he can stand in the right place.
Right. He does make a significant amount of money on this team. And, sometimes sometimes you worry that it is the fact that a guy has made his contract that makes you wonder if that's why he doesn't give shit in the regular season. But, you can't really say. All we can say about the Ducks game is that the Sharks, again, largely dominated. Some guys who we've been talking about all summer and into last spring showed up on the scoreboard. Evander Kane with a beautiful goal, and I would bet you that you could, if you were a Ducks fan looking at Kane's goal from the other side, you could say more or less what we were saying about Jones. You would like to not see that puck squeak through.
Yeah.
You might even say the same thing about Hurdle's magnificent, rest in peace Cameron Fowler, dangle around goal, that went sort of short side top corner, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I would say in both cases, those goals differ from the goal that we're specifically talking about, the backhander, because they're both head up forehand shot goals that, Kane and Hurdle got to choose where that puck went.
Mm-hmm.
That is very much between shooter and goalie. It's a guessing game, kind of. A backhander, it doesn't have the same sort of precision, and when you look at the replay, it's very much he was off position.
Right, exactly.
Whereas Gibson, I mean, he looked to be set up for both shots, and it was just, damn, sorry, man, bad guess.
Yeah, totally. I mean, again, like, I think my takeaway from the first game, my overall takeaways is that's a game the Sharks should have won, right? And largely gave away because of bad goalie play. And look, as I said, Burns was a contributor to one of those goals with his mistakes, but that's the way this team works. Burns is going to give, and Burns is going to take away. And whoever's going to play goalie,
he's missing part of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, he contributed to the possession play, and anyways, regardless, like, this is what we've come to live with over the years, right? And in order to survive that, your goalie has to be invested in the game, and Jones was not invested in that game, or at least didn't appear to be invested in the game. The Sharks should have walked away with a win in this game, and they did not. And they even could have largely walked away with a win, with a better third period lock in. This actually, I'm going to go off on a small rant here, if you don't mind, Colin.
Go ahead.
So as I was walking out of the arena, they were awarding the 3 stars, and they gave John Gibson first star. And, you always see this, right? You see, one team piles up 33 shots and the other team only gets 15. And of course the announcers say, oh, well, this is what happens when one goalie stands on his head and steals a win, right?
Wait. I want to add a footnote there.
Yes, please.
My view of goalie save percentage is 90% save percentage is you stood in the right place. Getting above 90%, you made good guesses in the guessing game that shooter and goalie have to play in those situations where it's like, I'm in the right place, you're in the right place with advantage. Where are you gonna go?
Well,
and sorry to close out, and then to get like above 94% is, oh my God, what did that person do?
Right.
And Gibson was at 93. So yeah, he did really well. He guessed really well in those situations where he's supposed to lose.
Well, he played a strong positional game.
Yes, exactly.
He even made mistakes, right? Again, that Kane goal, if the Sharks had won that game, Anaheim fans would be bitching and moaning about that goal. Gibson has to have that, right? You can't have a puck squeak through you like that. Right? The only reason they're not is because Jones played worse.
Sure.
Gibson absolutely played a strong positional game, and that's the difference between a win and a loss in this game. But that doesn't mean that John Gibson played a great game. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I would say he did not have to face a large number of really scary shots. He had to face a large number of high percentage shots, but not individual effort type saves.
So here's I don't disagree with you, but the Sharks piled up 15 high danger scoring chances in this game.
Yeah.
Right? And how many do you think the Ducks had by contrast?
4.
Very close. 5, right? So, when you look at one of these high danger, chances, really what you're saying is it's in a particular location of the ice, right? It's in that what we like to call the home plate area, right? It goes out from the goal mouth to the circles and then up. kind of shaped like a pentagon almost.
Yep.
So that doesn't guarantee they're shots that don't just basically go into a goalie's chest or what have you, but they're from areas that typically create a lot of goals. The Sharks had 15 of those, which is an extraordinary number. Like,
yes.
You expect a team to win when they get that many. And so it's easy when you see that those kind of numbers for, announcers who aren't really paying attention to the game to be like, oh, John Gibson just stood on his head. But I don't feel like he did in this game, right? There wasn't a lot of flashing of the leather. There was maybe one glove save I remember on Barclay Goodrow, but Goodrow was firing it from about the top of the circle's middle of the ice, so it wasn't a great shot or a great location anyway, right? And this is one of my bugaboos, right? Is that, when a team just outshoots the other team, the win is credited to a goalie just having an amazing game. And this is a clear indicator that he's going to have a year in which he fights for the Vezina trophy.
Oh, yeah.
And let me just say, that's a load of fucking horseshit when it comes to this game.
Yep.
You're right that Gibson played a strong positional game, and that was all they needed because it's a game of bounces, and the Sharks didn't get any bounces in this game. They just didn't.
Sure. I think so. When we get to season expectations, I'll get back to this. But generally, I think this is a team. The composition we have now is they manufacture bounces. So, us not get I don't really accept the we didn't get bounces argument this season, except in those times when it's literally a spinning puck that just spins away from the goal line. When we have those arcane ritual, bad games, then I'll shake my head. But
well, I mean, you don't think this was that? You don't think this was one of those games where the Sharks just kind of seemed snake bit? I mean, they outshot, not just shot attempts, like shots on goal. Anaheim 33-15.
Yeah. And I'm a Sharks fan. I'm used to these numbers.
I mean, if you want to talk about just shot attempts, it's 71-34.
I think I put the spotlight of, what the fuck onto Jones. And
right.
Then yeah, I look at the Burns mistakes, but
right.
No. We can't come off of a podcast saying, ho, 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 I'm looking forward to those, 15 to 16 goal games. And then, sit here and look at a game where we produced 2 and be like, oh, we didn't get the bounces. I think if Jones backstops us, because, as we've covered in previous seasons, the game sort of starts from the goalie forward, and you need that goalie to be a backstop that the team can bounce off of.
Totally.
If he had backstopped us here, I feel like, yeah, this is a game where we should have put up a bunch more goals and maybe had actually the score line reversed, but not an empty net. So 5-2 with a bunch of 5-on-5 goals. Mm-hmm. So no, I don't feel like it was purely we didn't get the luck we needed. I think we put up great numbers, but I don't think this team has to struggle to put up great numbers. I think this team struggles to find the chemistry that makes those great numbers really spectacular. That really is like, oh, the Sharks are on a power play. I'll just go get a Coke while we score.
So in that vein, I think there are some things to say about the Anaheim game, right? The power play didn't deliver.
No.
The penalty kill didn't deliver. And in fact, quite the opposite, except, that amazing shorthanded goal by Hurdle.
Yeah.
And the goalie didn't deliver. And that's a way to turn what should be a 4-1 win into a 5-2 defeat for sure. Right. But what I mean by the bounces thing is when you take 71 shots, when you take over 30 more shots than the opponent, shot attempts than the opponent, and over 15 more shots, more than 15 shots more than the opponent, a bounce here and there can change things around, right? Where instead of losing 5-2 as the Sharks did, or 4-2, not counting the empty net goal, instead it's 3-3 or even a 4-1 victory, right? That's what I mean by the bounces thing. We've been Sharks fans long enough to see a lot of these types of losses, right?
Yeah, but
where your goalie's letting in beach balls.
Yeah, no. I will not defend Jones coming out of this game. I think he is a better goalie. Well, no, I think he's exactly as good as most people think he is. But he is a playoff and Stanley Cup goalie. So, he gets that nod from me. But in this game, he sucked out loud.
Yeah.
But look at the Penguins. Like, back when we played them in the Stanley Cup, that was a team that if they didn't get bounces, then it wasn't a big deal because they just said, oh, okay, we didn't get that bounce. Let's go make 5 more.
Right.
And their bounces were scary. I mean, that team came at you, and it wasn't a matter of where the shot was coming from. It was, can you get somebody between the shot and the goal when it's going to just appear from somewhere? I think that's the team we have. I think you look at the places we produce from, as you said. You look at the event charts for a lot of our players. This is a team that produces opportunities. It's composing those opportunities into that lethal mix where it's like, oh, okay, here's our 5 sort of go-to goal production methods. And then we just have the dynamic opportunities that you create sort of in the flow of play.
Yeah.
And we're not quite there yet where we have the detailed game plan or the bag of tricks we sort of slide into. I think we're seeing indicators that there are tricks to be had, and some of the players are starting to find those relationships. But no, we need to just find that magical mix so that those opportunities are produced in such a way that we go, yeah, we didn't get the bounce, but we did get those 7 other goals.
Well, that sounds ambitious to me. So I guess my takeaways in terms of things that I enjoyed about this game, even with it being a loss, is Evander Kane looked outstanding throughout the game, and he kind of needs to really show up this year, given the amount of money the Sharks are paying and sort of the doubts that there have been about Kane around the league and even in our fan base. Tomas Hertl, I think, kind of reflecting our perspective on the growth he showed last year in the playoffs, looks like a man possessed. Timo Meier was a wrecking ball in this game, even though he didn't score.
Mm-hmm.
Jumbo looked okay. I mean, look, it's hard to really actually bag on anybody in this game because every Sharks line simply dominated every Ducks line that they played against.
Yep.
Antti Suomela, a guy who I was a little iffy about in the preseason, has in this game even continued to show improvement to me away from the puck.
He belongs in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll talk about this more when we get to tonight's game.
Because
I have a lot to say about him in tonight's game. I actually owe Melker Karlsson a bit of an apology because he looked pretty fantastic against the Ducks, certainly compared to Goodrow, who did not look great. On the downside, Pavs had trouble holding onto the puck all night long in the Ducks game, and that had me a bit worried. And of course, Burns was a tire fire at different times. And Couture was pretty invisible, I guess would be the last thing I would say about my takeaways about the Ducks games. Did you have anything that I haven't kind of called out that you want to talk about the Ducks?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite part of this game was that it ended. So, no, I generally agree with you. Within the context of this game, I mean, I like Goodrow. I've liked Goodrow for a while now. I do think he might earn himself an order of nachos in the press box if he doesn't step up a little harder. But that sort of ties into how I hope we use these next 18 games.
Yeah, well, speaking of Goodrow and how we feel about him, the Sharks clearly feel a little bit differently about him because in between games, they awarded him with a brand new extension. I
mean, actually, I need to Tell me about this extension that I obviously have done my research on.
So they gave him a 2-year contract extension worth about $1.3 million over 2 years. So they didn't break the bank.
I'm fine with this.
Yeah, they didn't break the bank to keep Goodrow. I was a little surprised that he was a signing priority for this team, since they've, over the past years, made the young guys sort of earn their contracts as they went along. That's the current. That's the current contract. He's still making $650,000 this year. Sorry, the extension is $1 million per. Yeah. So for about a total of $1.8 million. So when you count cap hit, it's about little less than $1 million per. Bonuses are $100,000 a year. So again, not breaking the bank. He's making not very much money for a 25-year-old fourth liner, and that's fine. He's young. He's making not a huge amount of money, but here's my issue, Colin. I'm going to go ahead and jump out on this. I wish Rourke Chartier was actually playing on that fourth line. And when I look at the fourth line, I want to see Sorensen playing as well. I feel like he earned an extended look from what he delivered in the playoffs last year. So that leaves two guys kind of on the cutting block, right? Mm-hmm. Melker Karlsson, who I would have been advocating to sit based on the way he played last year and the way he kind of played in preseason, or Goodrow. The Sharks are obviously signaling here that Goodrow is a fourth line stalwart, I'd guess, for the time being. So how do you feel about that?
Well, okay. First off, I like Goodrow. I've wished that he sort of transitioned into like NHL level of his play faster. I mean, hell, I've been chirping for him to, step up and show us what he can do for like 2 seasons now. So I'm totally happy with this, and I think this is his step up season. I don't know if he's going to be this dramatic impact on the scoring line. I would be perfectly happy with 30 points out of him. But I like the signing. It's a good contract. I'm a little sad that it's a fairly tasty contract to trade off, because I think he's going to look appealing to people playing the way that I expect him to play in the next coming games. I think this last game against the Kings, he showed the same flashes of it he's been showing for a while. So I'm fine with the contract. I'm fine with us keeping him around if we do. Granted, I would like to actually see him realize what I think he's capable of. And yeah, I'm not in a bad place with this overall signing. I do agree, though, that we need to be treating this next block of games as tryouts, because we clearly did not get the tryouts and get the looks we needed to build the right composition of players in these preseason games. So now we've got the in-season preseason where Goodrow needs to sit and Chartier needs to come up and show us what he can do, and these guys need to be in direct competition. And hopefully next game we see that happen, because while I think Goodrow played really well in the Kings game, I think you need to just cycle people in. You need to keep the competition fierce for those bottom 6 roles, because we have depth. We have the people who could possibly step up.
Yeah. Well, I'm dubious. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and clearly regular season and preseason are different in the players' heads, so
yeah,
give them that chance.
I'm dubious of a couple of those things that you're looking to see. I'm dubious that Goodrow, even if he's given a full season of play, can score 30 points. I think, though, I do think that I'm also dubious that DeBoer is going to sit anybody down after a win, particularly when he didn't sit anybody down after a loss. No. It is sort of a DeBoer thing to keep the team sort of as it was between games, as long as they've won it, barring an injury. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think that one of these guys, Carlson or Goodrow, needs to sit. Carlson is making more money, obviously, than Goodrow does. I mean, he's making basically twice the salary that Goodrow makes at this point. So I don't know. As much as I would love to see Chartier and would advocate that Chartier needs to be playing, I feel like the Sharks are going to have to go on a 2 or 3 game losing streak before we see DeBoer shake things up, personally.
Well, what if it is just, trade bait? What if Goodrow is just being packaged to, shuffle off, and, we see the interesting move would be something like Braun and Goodrow for like a second, third tweener who is willing to sort of fill out the bottom. Like Kessel, but somebody who can't sing, hit songs from the 80s.
Or I guess what you mean is somebody who, because there's no way the Sharks could shake somebody like Kessel loose for that package. But
but I'm saying like a player that fills the role like Kessel did for the Penguins. Somebody who comes in and takes a third line, and you just sort of blink your eyes thinking, wait, third line, that guy? Okay.
I guess how I feel about, that is, again, my issue is that a guy like Chartier needs to be playing. And if you're just going to trade whoever's playing right now for another guy who's just going to play, then that's just treading water. You know what I mean?
Well, what if it's you drop 2 and, bring 1 and then pair him with Chartier?
Yeah, maybe.
What if it's Carlson and Goodrow? And I think one of the reasons Carlson continues to survive on the roster is because of the penalty kill he provides.
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting point and something I think I actually wanted to talk about. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Because as I've complained about Carlson previously, but also sort of praised his play at even strength in the Ducks game anyway. The answer to my wishes that he would be sitting down, allowing Chartier to play is that he is allegedly, a key member of that PK. And so I'm going to go off on a little bit of a rant here. There's this idea that the Sharks penalty kill is good because it killed, a lot of penalties last year. But if you look at the underlying numbers for that penalty kill last year, which, did look quite good, they actually shouldn't have been as good as they were based on the number of shots that were given up and the number of high danger chances you've given up. And if you want to, if you want more information about this, folks who are listening, you should listen to or take a look at one of the Fear the Fin contributors posted about this last year and reposted in the last couple of days, Foulball 15. So basically the Sharks penalty kill overperformed their underlying metrics. And I know that Alex, for example, he's not here to talk about this, but when he looks at how Melker plays on the penalty kill, Melker looks like a guy who doesn't really know where he's supposed to be and is just being active for the sake of being active, if you know what I mean. Now, what that means is occasionally his active stick gets in the way of a puck, and that happened tonight. I was keeping an eye on him on the penalty kill, and that ends up making him look like he's doing a great job. But I'm not really sure Melker's actually a good or effective penalty killer, if you know what I mean.
So, yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and I agree. I would couch the argument as he fills the role, and for some reason our team doesn't ask the question, could somebody fill it better?
Yeah.
And like maybe the coaching staff sees penalties as a waste of a good player, like a waste of a player who should be on the power play.
Yeah.
I don't get the philosophy of don't experiment when there's obvious room for improvement.
Well, you know what's interesting about that, Colin, is that if you look at the Sharks penalty kill, they actually cycle in a remarkable number of the kind of top Sharks players. You know what I mean?
But is that because they're actually psyching people, or is it because we have a team that, is fairly, equal opportunity when it comes to taking penalties.
Well, I'm not sure. I guess what I would say is, Brent Burns, for example, plays an awful lot of time on the penalty kill. And that, he, again, in the Ducks game, he's a guy who's out of position on one goal, but at other times, like, there is a benefit to his active stick and instincts in a penalty kill. So I'm not saying it's bad that Brent Burns is on the penalty kill, but I couldn't tell you that it's a good thing, given, again, that the penalty kill isn't actually good, even if it, the numbers, the counting stats make it look like they are.
Yep.
But you also see, like, in some cases, you see guys like Evander Kane on the penalty kill, a guy who has no reputation as a defensive player.
Yep.
And so I don't really, I think I could say this about both the special teams units for the Sharks. I'm not sure the coaching staff knows what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Wow, you're limiting just to special teams.
Well, in this particular instance. Now, with all of that said, like, again, I think you're right that the team thinks Melker is good at penalty killing, and hence he's playing. I think you're right about that.
Is it specifically, he's a great penalty killer, so we should use him above Thornton? Or is it, we can't put Jumbo out there for this penalty?
I think Jumbo's just too slow to play the penalty kill. No, I think the system and team emphasize speed and disruptiveness, like with quotes around it, if you know what I mean, and a little bit of grit. And so that kind of dictates who's on those units, right? Melker provides the speed, and a guy like Kane provides some power and grittiness. Burns provides some speed and stick.
So basically,
Braun provides a little strength.
So you're leading something that I find interesting, which is, are you arguing that this coaching staff basically fills out a role roster and fills roles rather than trying to create
to find the best?
Rather than trying to, I'll use a word that we grew to love under McLeloo.
Right.
Is it a series of a set of roles, or is it a system?
So let me ask you this, Colin. Who are the 4 best defensive players on the Sharks, in your opinion? Pick two forwards and 2 defensemen.
Vlasic. Okay, well, so right now, Vlasic, Carlson, Eric, Couture, and LeBanc.
Oh, interesting. I don't think I'd have LeBanc in my top 4.
Or maybe it's a 3-way tie: LeBanc, Hurdle, and Donskoy.
Okay, so for me, I think if I was going to pick a penalty kill unit that you had to have out there, in a key moment, Vlasic for sure.
Yeah.
Joachim Ryan.
Okay.
And then on the offensive side, absolutely Logan Couture. And for the 4th, I'd probably pick Hurdle. I think I'd go with you on that.
Yeah.
Yeah?
You'd go 2 left on defense.
I mean, it's, I'm an advocate of the left-right defensive pairings when you're talking about even strength.
Okay.
Because it's more about maintaining the zone, you know what I mean? And making sure you have the right shots on the right side on the offensive zone. I think on the defensive side, I don't think it matters as much. And so I don't worry about that.
Oh,
but I'm not an NHL coach, so I might be wrong.
For me, it sticks in lanes. It's more comfortable for the different handedness players to cover the lane, cover the pass and shooting lane.
Yeah, you might be right there.
So yeah, Ryan is. I mean, okay, I'm the person who went on podcast record last season, I think, or the season before, saying that every time I saw Ryan playing, I kept mistaking him for Martin.
Right. They do look very alike, though they don't play very alike.
But that's how much Ryan is sort of invisible for me. And he's the good kind of invisible. He's the Braun when Braun is allowing like less than 1 shot attempt per shift and standing next to Vlasic and is an amazing shutdown player. You don't see him. But the other team hates him.
Yeah.
So that's Ryan for me. And I guess I'm making the argument that, yeah, he's exactly what you're saying. He's that great defensive player that you never see because he's doing his job.
Yeah. So here's a question for you, and this comes from our listeners. Why do you think, because I already said it's kind of weird that the Sharks signed Goodrow here rather than letting him kind of wait till the end of the season. And you said something earlier about, maybe Goodrow's being played to showcase him for a trade.
Yeah.
I wonder if that is what they're doing with Karlsson more so than with Goodrow. Why do you think
that would? Yeah, go. Sorry.
Yeah, why do you think the Sharks are signed Goodrow at this moment in time?
It's so.
I'll be honest, I can't figure it out.
So, hockey is such a weird, like, clubhouse business. I mean, you talk all the time. It's like, oh, he's giving us this one, but we'll make sure he gets paid down the line. It just does. That's not how a traditional business operates. There's such sort of a clubhouse feel where contracts are signed because it's like, oh, we wanted to make sure, we promised him that he would sort of get this sort of money, so we signed him to roughly the money we think we could still flip him with,
right,
to make sure he got the contract he wanted, and then we traded him off so that he's getting what he wanted and he's happy with the trade, and he is positive in the locker room or whatever.
Right.
And so I think this was, if we trade him, it was we're trading you, but we think that if you can fill this role and present yourself well, we can flip you with this contract, when maybe he wanted like 1.6 instead of 1.3 or whatever he got.
But if you're Goodrow, right, and you're hoping that you're going to get your next contract, why don't you just wait till the end of the year? And, if you can't come to terms with the Sharks, hit the open market.
Okay, so look at the difference of opinions between how you look at him and how I look at him. I would say you're gonna have the spectrum of appreciation of his play between us, and so GMs will fall into that spectrum. And there's the GM who's sort of on my side but leaning towards you, going, I
mean, he's a nobody. Let's just be honest, right? I mean, there's 40 more Barclay Goodrows in the league.
Yeah, well, like there's hundreds of
80
players
more.
who are. Well, I'm just saying, there's hundreds of players in the NHL who people believe they're on the bubble. It's like they just need to slide a little bit down, and they're in the zone, and they're amazing, and they're everything you wanted. And I think Goodrow is that sort of player. You are just looking at the hard numbers and going, yeah, maybe, but he's never been that player.
Well, no. So again, let me restate sort of my case of Goodrow. So he's 25, and that's the physical prime for NHL players, 24, 25, right? You're paying basically peanuts to him.
Yep.
And he's a fourth line player. He's sort of prototypically. He's not going to score a ton of points. He's not particularly effective, in my opinion, on the penalty kill. He's just
a 13th forward.
He's just a fill. I mean, on this team, he's certainly eligible to be that 13th forward. So is Karlsson. On the other hand, he could develop into something slightly better, but he's never going to be more than he's shown us what he is, I guess is what I would say. Right. And so why commit to 2 more years of that when that is a replaceable, asset? That's an asset that you could bring out of the AHL at almost any time, right? And what's really baffling to me about this is that I like Goodrow. I think he is a fine fourth line player, and it's way better to sign a 25-year-old to this kind of contract than a 29 or 31-year-old who's much more likely to physically decline, right?
Yep.
So in that sense, I am pro this signing, except that there might be 3 or 4 more guys at the coming up in the next year or so who he's blocking. Chemlevsky, Chekovich, he's already blocking Chartier. There's 2 Russians who I'm not even thinking of.
So there's there's another angle on the signing and on the sort of contract management, which
I mean, he's thinking. I'm glad you said that. He's thinking of a contract slot, right? You've got Gambrell, Luchunov.
Well, yeah. So I would say it's a contract that's also attractive enough that if we waived him, he would go and still get the pay that he wanted.
I suppose, in the sense that that's what they did with Nieto.
Yeah.
I would argue Nieto was a better player.
I agree. Right. I love Nieto. No, don't get it. If we should have kept him, like that, that's my opinion of Nieto. And I would have kept him over Goodrow. So yeah, totally agree.
Okay. So I guess I think we're maybe both a little baffled by this, and we're going to have to wait to see what comes of this deal. I mean, to me, it seems to signal that somebody is going to be moving.
Yeah.
On this team, because signing him, it doesn't really affect the cap hit today, but next year it pushes the Sharks even further against the cap in a year in which they've got to re-sign the newcomer, Antti Suomela. They've got to re-sign Timo Meier. They've got to re-sign Kevin Labanc. Sorensen will be a UFA. So actually that's what's interesting to me about this is they prioritized Goodrow over Sorensen. And granted, Goodrow's a year younger, but Sorensen at least scored some goals in the playoffs, right? And Chartier is an RFA as well. Joakim Ryan's an RFA. Carlson is sitting there without a contract, and so you throw an extra $300,000 at Goodrow. That doesn't seem like much, and I suppose that's true, but every little bit matters.
So I've given up trying to predict which way Wilson is thinking. My record of success is 0. 0 for however many crazy things he's done. I guess the reason I can have the opinion I have is I don't really have expectations out of Wilson of what he's going to do. I just sit and watch and go, well, it could be any of these reasons, but we don't really know until we get to the other side of it.
Yeah. I guess what actually finish your thought.
Well, I hope so. I'll marry myself to my hopes. I hope we see the sort of tryout cycle happen over the next few games, and I hope we get to see that bottom 6, cycle in and cycle out and look for different compositions. And I hope that this signing of Goodrow is not Goodrow's our fourth line, and that's the last we're hearing of it.
Right.
Because that's not preparing us for a postseason, and we have to be using the regular season to just discover and refine on a winning game plan, and 2, finding that chemistry that allows a team to find that next level of play that you need in the playoffs. So if this is a Goodrow's our fourth line center and that's it, he's the new Tierney for life, not thrilled.
Well, I think Tierney is
something else. Then let's go.
Actually, let's transition to the Kings game, because I think we can talk about Tierney and Tierney replacement in that vein.
Yeah, so, Carlson's great.
No, I'm not talking about Carlson. I'm talking about Antti Suomela,
who I am also thoroughly enjoying.
Yeah. So the Ducks loss was brutal. And so I think that coming into tonight, Sharks fans were hoping to see the Sharks shake off that, hoping to see a slightly better Martin Jones performance. And we kind of got what we were looking for, I guess, in that vein in game 2. Ultimately, this would end up being a 3-2 Sharks overtime win, meaning that the Kings did get a point out of this, but the Sharks got 2, which is what you'd like to see. And ultimately, at the end of the game, the Sharks certainly, particularly from about the middle of the second period to the end of the third, pushed possession far in their direction. But also, this is a game that did feature at least one Martin Jones oopsie that you would like to not see him him make. But on the other hand, there were other moments in this game where Jones stood tall, and the penalty kill was tested but didn't break. And the Sharks saw some things that are great that we saw in the first game, and some additional things that we didn't see in the first game that ended up tilting in the Sharks' favor, I would say. So what were your overall thoughts on this win, Colin?
So I have a hard time understanding the play that I'm watching out of this team in these last two games. And it's easier to be okay or be analytical when we win, because it's easier to be detached when you're happy. I don't quite know what's wrong, but we're slightly out of phase. And I mean, call that player chemistry. It just feels like we are everywhere and we're doing everything, and it's complete hockey that's just really great to watch at times, but something's wrong. And just the play doesn't line up. We look slower than we are, and this game it felt kind of awkward because we were on point. We're making great, amazing passes. And we're getting great opportunities off those passes, and you're seeing good cycle. Yet it's not that. I feel like if we're a 5-gear team, I feel like we're sort of sitting at the 3rd gear and like slipping up to 4th every once in a while. And everything, all the timing is a little bit off. But when it works, we have amazing plays. I mean, we have Meier just carrying the play, and we have these nifty little passes into scary shots. We have a Wookiee wandering dazed in the corner, and then we've got the winning goal, which is just such a great play. I mean, ignore the shot, ignore the pass to set up the shot, just the whole play, the entire 3 minutes up to that shot was just fantastic. And so, as Alex kept saying in the last podcast, we can get to a really amazing place if we could just figure out how. And I mean, okay, then why is Burns just so lost with this team?
I mean, is it really any different than the last 2 years?
It feels different. It seems different. Why?
Well, I mean, boy, that is such a great question. I mean, I worry. I mean, we're talking about a guy who is now over 30, and this is the time in a guy's career where their physical tools start to diminish. And I have worried for a while that that he's lost some speed and hand-eye as he's aged that he used to use effectively to get himself out of the trouble he puts himself in. Right. So in that sense, when he makes a mistake, he can no longer sort of skill his way out of it, if that makes sense. And so we see more of those bumblefuck plays show up as goals in the back of our net.
So basically, because maybe this touches on something, I feel like in terms of hockey sense, this is a smarter team than we had last season. Like it seems like we're making, here's a number if we actually track this stat, but the famous backhand pass at our defensive blue line breakout play that was just the Sharks staple. I mean, just idiotic play. I don't see that anymore.
Yeah. Well, we're only 2 games into the season.
Sure.
Small sample size.
Yeah, exactly. But generally, I feel we are a much more heads-up team. We are making smarter passes, and we're controlling the puck in a more professional manner. And you don't see the the bumblefuck silly plays happening quite as much.
Yeah.
Except with Burns.
Right.
And so are you arguing that Burns isn't a smart enough hockey player to be on this team?
Well, no, I'm not saying that, though. If there was one player who is, I think, ripe to be traded for a big windfall of assets, it is absolutely Burns. Granted that I don't think you could easily do that because I'm pretty sure he has a no trade clause.
Oh, yeah.
So what I would say is...
Oh, modified no trade.
Yeah. I'd say a few things about that. I don't disagree that this is a smart team. It absolutely is, right? You've got some key pieces who are just now growing into their prime. And I think that might be part of it, right? You're talking about Kevin Labanc and Tomas Hertl and Joachim Ryan, but Barclay Goodrow included in terms of like experience and age, or just hitting their prime. And I think to be perfectly honest, like a guy who continues to impress me with his play and the intelligence of his play in ways that I never expected, it's Timo Meier.
Yeah.
Right. The way Timo Meier played as a very young player struck me as bonehead to be a bonehead permanently.
Yeah.
And when I think pushed him into being a potentially great player over the last half season plus, is that he eliminated the 95% of that boneheadedness and the attempts to make passes he shouldn't make.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't see that as much from him anymore. So I think that's part of it. Like the young players that the Sharks have that are going to be this young core are smart players playing smartly. Additionally, I think to reflect on what you're saying about the boneheaded plays in the defensive zone, or just bad choices, bad passes, inability to get the puck out of the defensive zone that looks like, dumb play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A huge part of that is that who's paired with Vlasic now? It's Erik Karlsson.
Mm-hmm.
And that guy, I haven't seen him make a terrible decision in the defensive zone yet.
Oh my God. It's such an amazing pair to watch.
Yeah. And not to say that Justin Braun, who is Vlasic's pair over the last few years.
Let's face it, that relationship is over.
But not to say that he was dumb, but his tools of getting the puck out of the zone were incredibly limited. Both he and Vlasic are not great players at getting the puck out of the defensive zone. The Vlasic is significantly better than Braun.
Yeah. But Vlasic has always needed speed next to him. Like he needs somebody who can move and who's got that step. And Braun always sort of provided that while not fucking up on the regular.
Well, I would argue that Braun didn't really provide that speed, but they both kind of brought the same competence at getting the puck out of the zone, given time and space.
Compared to Vlasic, Braun could carry the puck with speed consistently better. Compared to Karlsson, Braun is a freaking traffic cone.
Right.
I mean, it's all the not bitter comments I saw after the trade, all the people saying, enjoy this, enjoy that, you're going to love it when this happens. And it's like, yes, I love that we have a defensive pair where I see the other team coming with the puck. I'm like, no big deal. Jones, do your job, no big deal.
So to kind of finish the thought I was making there is that Braun and Dylan are probably the least effective pair at getting the puck out of the defensive zone. And even in that pairing, it's really on Dylan because he has improved his skating so much to be the guy who gets the puck out of the zone there. So if he makes a boneheaded play like he did tonight, where he tried to give a puck over to Braun who was fully covered and that led to a penalty, that's on both of them in some sense, but that's really on Dylan. But it's also because Braun is he's so slow at this point that he's not effective at getting the puck out of the zone, right? He's just aged out of that effectiveness. And that's, an argument that maybe Braun should get some nights off and we should see what Heed or Smek can do in that spot. But that'll never happen because DeBoer isn't interested in actually like finding the perfect lineup. He's just interested in playing who he feels he should play.
Well, okay. So I agree that historically, well, except for his first season, historically correct. De Boer sort of found his niche and just sort of settled into it. But I mean, we talked about how much depth we had last season, and that's increased, even though we've given up pieces to bring Karlsson in.
Yeah.
We are a deeper team than we were last season. It's amazing. So,
yeah, well, and to speak to that, like, I said before the season that there were 3 or 4 players we need to see step up for this team to match what we see as their sort of upper level, right? Vander Kane, Timo Meier, Tomas Hertl.
Check.
And did I say Evander Kane?
Yep.
And so Kevin Labanc is the 4th.
Check.
Right? Who I left out of that was Antti Suomela, because who I would have said before would have been Chris Tierney. And of course, Tierney got moved to get Karlsson.
So, Ben, I will take players who have put up points in our first 2 games for 500.
Well done. Yeah, well done, right? I think my takeaways from the Kings game, is that Evander Kane continued to play like a monster. Tomas Hertl continued to play like a monster. Kevin Labanc was strong in his play mostly. And Suomela continued to impress. And I think at this point I will say that whatever Chris Tierney is going to do this year, and I was projecting him to get between 50 to 55 points with an outlier possibility of 60 with power play time, we should see from Suomela. He's been that impressive.
So here's between Suomela and Tierney, here's what I like about Suomela. Tierney tried to carry the play by carrying the puck. Mm-hmm. Suomela is like a traffic warden. He's always sort of in the middle of it, but the puck, the puck comes to him and he gets it somewhere else. If that somewhere else is at the net, then he seems to like those opportunities. But he's not trying to sit there and be like, look at me, I've got the puck. He's like, here's the puck, keep the cycle going, keep the play active, keep other people involved. I hope that's not just, eyeball 1.0 and over time we see him being more and more puck hungry. But it seems like the puck channels through him more than stops with him. And you add that to Donskoy, who is similarly very, keep the puck going. If I've got to carry it this 10 feet, I'll do that. But let's get somebody else in on this play. Very, very socialist hockey, if you will. I really, really like what I'm seeing. Even if I find Kane being added into that to be just bizarre.
Yeah, well, bizarre, but obviously incredibly effective. I think what I would say about Chris Tierney is he was a guy who had a good but not great shot and was a bad passer who would out of nowhere make the most incredible pass once every 20 games, and thus fool you into thinking that he was actually a good passer. Whereas Suomela feels like a guy who is pretty good on, to me anyway, and again, 2 games and preseason is all we've seen of the guy so far. But he seems to be good at a lot of things, and I would say, speaking to that hockey sense question, I never got the sense that Chris Tierney was seeing the play develop ahead of the play. He was just using his physical tools and he had good physical tools, but his physical tools to just barely be where he needed to be at any given moment. Whereas Suomela feels like a guy who anticipates the play.
Yeah, he's always he always seems to appear in the middle of it, though maybe you don't know how he got there.
Right. Yeah, and you never would have said the same thing about Tierney. They're just very different players. Tierney was a larger guy, a slower guy. Suomela is a smaller guy and a little bit more...
much quicker.
Yeah, quicker is probably the right way to put it. I wouldn't say he's fast per se, but he's quicker. And I think that benefits Donskoy, and I think that obviously that benefits Kane, who's both fast and strong. And through 2 games, that third line has been the Sharks' best line, period.
Which is so weird that we have been saying that for 3 seasons now, that third line, whatever that third line happened to be, DeBoer seems to be good at making third lines.
Well, I mean, I think it's Couture, Donskoy, when they were at their top.
Oh yeah,
were the second line, and they were probably the one that we focused on as much as any.
Sure,
you know what I mean.
So for Suomela, are you finding yourself in a similar observational headspace as when Donskoy first came up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, let's say, because it took Donskoy about half a season to really
30
really
games
gel here. I would say that Suomela already feels like, I mean, he's not, look, I mean, Donskoy does some things that you don't see outside of like old highlights of, oh gosh, the guys, the Detroit late round draft picks.
Oh damn! Is that not Zetterberg?
Zetterberg, yeah. Like Donskoy will occasionally pull off a move that you don't see from a guy outside of like Zetterberg,
okay,
right? Or Datsyuk.
Yeah.
Not that he's at the same. Not that, again, I'm not trying to say that he is at the same skill level or point production as those guys, but like Donskoy has that ability to just like out of nowhere, stick handle his way through like 3 guys. Something we're seeing Hertl do more of over the first couple of games of the season.
Hertl is becoming a monster.
Absolutely. I don't see that sort of thing from Suomela, right?
No, and I don't think we will ever see that from him.
Right.
But
so it's not quite the same.
I'm curious if Suomela is acclimating possibly faster.
Yes.
Because there's somebody on the team to explain it to him and finish.
Well, I think, I mean, maybe you might very well be right. It also just may be that Suomela plays a simpler, more straightforward game that is still a strong game that meshes well with 2 very good players that basically get to carry him to success, if you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Like, how many 24-year-old UFAs come over to the NHL and get to play with Evander Kane?
Yeah. Who get to have a winger where it's like, hey, I've taken the puck away from the other team. Do you want it? Oh, look at that. You scored a goal. Thanks for that.
Right. Yeah. He's in an excellent position to succeed.
Yes. Agreed.
The real question is, if Suomela wasn't here, would it really be that different if it was Rourke Chartier playing in that line?
Yes, because Goodrow would not be our third line center then. And it hurts me to say that, because here's the thing. I believe, actually, given the line he's on right now, Goodrow has tremendous upside. But I cannot argue that Chartier does not have better upside and also does not have better production, right? If he had played this game.
Chartier is 22, right?
Yep.
He's sitting up here at the NHL level for no real reason at this point. Yep. He's waiver eligible. I don't understand why he's not playing with the Barracuda unless they're going to actually put him in. But I don't see DeBoer actually putting him in because the Sharks have won a game. So I don't get it. I think it's dumb. I think a lot of stuff DeBoer does is dumb, and I've been on record with that for a very long time at this point. The only thing I can guess is that they are showcasing some of these 4th line guys for moves to clear up cap space.
As long as it's not Sorensen.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So I guess to wrap up our talk about this game, obviously you would like to see the Sharks hold on and win this game in regulation. It was a thrilling OT ending with the Sharks more or less completely dominating the last minute and 20 seconds of the 3-on-3, just holding the zone, holding the puck, smartly retreating out into the neutral zone to regroup multiple times, including, again, Timo Meier doing that at one point rather than
doing that at least twice. He held the puck through his line change, because I think he was first out.
Yeah,
and then he also held it for his line going off. I mean, his composure was just awesome. And I joked last season. It's like, oh ho ho. I hope he learns a move other than drop the shoulder and charge, because that was his entire season last season.
Right.
Well, Timo, thank you for listening. I am thoroughly told because you have learned new tricks and you are. I have to admit, I never really subscribed to the full degree of hype that you and Alex had on Timo last season. I was like, yeah, another power forward, a less inspired Hurdle. I think I'm going to be eating those sentiments this season.
I'll be honest, like I'm a guy who's been pro Timo for a while, and there's a lot of folks who are disappointed that he was taken where he was over a couple of other players who have had really strong starts to their career too. And I'm not going to argue that he's the best guy from his position in the draft at all. But again, I think the Sharks targeted him because he had a specific set of skills.
Yeah.
To quote a movie. That they wanted to add to this team, and that those skills include being sort of a heavy player to play against and an aggressive physical guy, which of course means he'll wear down, before he's 30, but whatever. And again, what surprised me about him is how quickly he acclimated to the speed and the smarts of the game. And he's just, to me, that's the area his game has grown the most. Not, his shot took a while to develop last year. But he plays a much smarter game than I ever expected him to. And that bodes really, really well for him. And of course, he scored tonight on a beautiful tip goal on a Vlasic shot. He contributed, at both ends of the ice. He's not expected to play particularly strong defensively, and yet I feel like he does contribute very well on the back check. That he's a guy who's dedicated himself to playing in both zones, though he's not really expected to do that much. He doesn't play much on the penalty kill, just as an example, right?
I think DeBoer is a stickler about back checking.
Yeah, I agree. So, and I can't argue with that emphasis. I think it is important, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember how we started on this, but
I just to maybe grab the thread and try to take it somewhere. Both Meier and Labanc have noticeably improved from last season. Like they've taken what they showed us in last season in the playoffs, and they've just built on it. And in both cases, I think it's that refinement, that sort of professionalism that comes with the experience, and maybe just comes from getting really comfortable with the tempo and the decision-making windows they're presented with. Because like Labanc is making great passes and great decisions, and he's still watching Jumbo a little bit too closely and saying, hey, I can do that too. But I mean, if I'm gonna be honest here, I feel like we've got Meier apprenticing under Pavelski, and Hurdle sort of saying, yeah, that's cool, but by the way, I'm massive and scary, so I'm going to go this way. And then you have Labanc, who's apprenticing under Thornton. I mean, he seems to be this version of Thornton if Thornton had Couture's step. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I hope to see these guys just keep building, really just having their breakout season.
Right.
Because it's great to watch. Yeah. And by the way, we've got this new Finnish guy who happens to be pretty good too.
Yeah. Well, the Sharks absolutely need all those guys. Again, the guys I've kind of focused on, because we expect Pavelski, Thornton to be not as good as they have been in the past because they're getting older. So we have to have Kane and Meier, Suomela, Hurdle, and Labanc show that they can grow they won't be those guys likely, right? But they've got to grow to the point where as an aggregate, they replace those guys. Same as, those Tierney, Meier, and Labanc were called upon to replace Marleau as an aggregate, right? And more than replaced Marleau as an aggregate last year for this team to get to the playoffs and then to make an impact in the playoffs. And over the first two games, those are the guys who we've largely seen most visibly. Yeah. Hurdle, Meier, Kane, Labanc, Suomela have really carried the offense.
They put up points. They put up points in the first 2 games.
Yeah.
So they've shown up, and at the very least,
Donskoy.
Yeah, and they've shown up and executed. And when our key complaint with Jones and Burns right now is failure of execution, I mean, it's great, and it's not like I disagree. I think Couture had a really good game against LA. I think
it was. I think Couture's game was fine against LA. He got an assist. Yeah. He played a ton of minutes. I thought he was a little less visible in the Ducks game for sure. I don't think he was bad tonight. But he's essentially the guy, right? When Pavelski and Thornton are done. So I expect to see more. I'll be honest.
I think he is. I think it's not so much that he isn't stepping up as much as he should be. I think it's Hertl is reminding us that he still really hasn't fully blossomed, and maybe it's just the contrasting comparison to how Hertl's playing that Couture seems a little more dim. And I mean, I think Couture's had a fine first 2 games. I think he is playing the game that we have come to know and expect from him. And because Hertl is just this sort of standout performer right now, and LeBanc is looking so great as well, Couture isn't shining quite as brightly. And I don't have anything bad to say about him. I think he is playing the game he's played, and he happens to have great line mates.
Yeah, so I think my summary of tonight's game is that the Sharks largely rescued Jones from some shakiness within win and OT. The same folks who played a strong game in Game 1 largely played a strong game in Game 2. Mm-hmm. I'm still a little concerned about Jumbo and Pavs, their speed and ability this year.
I don't like them on the same line.
There's things to talk about there for sure. And I'm still not sold on the fourth line ultimately. So we've run a bit long, so let's go ahead and since we have actual games. Normally when Alex is not here, I skip the 3 stars of the week because I think it's silly. But we actually have actual Sharks games to talk about, so let's do the 3 stars of the week. Colin.
Okay, 3 stars. I'm gonna start at my first star. My first star is our new top defensive pairing. Because Vlasic and Carl, I will be surprised if they are not the best defensive pairing in the league by the time we're in the playoffs. Like statistically, like all the numbers are just this is the least scored on, most scoring defensive line in the league. My second star goes to, this is really hard, Hertl. I mean, the guy looks like he is just set to be full beast mode this season. Some of the turnovers that he forced off LA, or just the outright muggings, were fantastic. And you see that baby face and that smile, and you forget that he's a big, scary, smart hockey player with great hands. So just outstanding there. Yeah, and third star's going to Kane, though he kind of deserves a first. Yeah, I'm sorry, Kane, you deserve a first star, but we have an amazing defensive pairing, and Hertl's more adorable than you.
All right. Man, I'm not sure my third. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I'm gonna amend the whole system a bit and say my anti-star goes to Jones.
Yeah. I don't blame you for that. I think, let's see. So if I were to sort of focus on who I thought were really, pushing things forward in the first game, I think I'm going to focus on the third line. I think I'd give my third star to Antti Suomela. I think I'd give my second star to Jonas Donskoy, though Tomas Hertl deserves to be in this conversation for that amazing goal. And my first star is going to go to Evander Kane. I mean, 2 goals in 2 games.
No, he absolutely deserves it.
My biggest question right, about the re-signing of Evander Kane is what is his actual potential with this team, right? He's never scored 60 points. He's being paid as if he scores 60 points every year. And I wanted to, look, I'll be honest, the way he's sort of been a cheerleader for this team since he got here, attempted to try to, be that cheerleader that brought, a very specific free agent.
Yeah. Well, but remember, Ben, word out of Buffalo is he is locker room cancer.
Right. Well, I mean, that's like he has a lot to prove to this community, and there are still questions about, again, his legal troubles in the past. I'm going to leave those aside. But in terms of contributing to this team, he needs to be
exactly
for what he's paid. For what he's paid, he needs to be scoring not just 60 points, probably 70 or 80.
He point per game so far. Let's see how long we get to say that.
Yeah, and he's been great. He did make one knuckle-headed penalty in the Ducks game, which again, that's one of the things I worry about with this team is how many knuckleheads can you afford to carry? And one of those knuckleheads, Brent Burns, costs the team goal every other game. So that's something to watch. But over these first two games, he's been way more of a positive than a negative, which I can't say about Brent Burns because that guy hasn't scored a point yet.
Yep.
And he has given up
two
through his poor positioning, at least two. So yeah, Kane gets my first star.
On last thought on Kane and sort of on the Boers. Weird lineup. Kane versus other teams' third lines makes me very happy.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that third line has been the Sharks' best line so far in this early season by far.
I think our top two lines demand high level, high star caliber attention. Mm-hmm. And then we have a third line that can easily face off against other teams' first lines. And Kane is a verifiable top line forward. So,
and again, in that vein, like in the Ducks game, the Sharks lines all outmatched the lines they were matched against, bearing in mind that the Ducks are hurt and syphilis on skates. Corey Perry wasn't there. And in this game, it's only the Pavelski Jumbo Meyer line that struggled a little bit against the Kings' first line. Every other line dominated their matchups. And in that sense, that's a good thing for the Sharks because if you are largely a wash on the top two lines or doing well there, a team that has talent, that leaves a huge gap between their third line and the opposing third line. And that's what we saw tonight is, once the Sharks had worn down the Kings because of those matchup problems, they pulled away. They didn't pull away on the scoreboard, but they pulled away in possession and eventually pulled the game out in OT. So,
well, it comes down for Kane. Like for me, with Kane on the third line, in the Kings game, when Kopitar is stepping off the ice exhausted, facing off against Thornton and Couture's line, Kane is the person stepping onto the ice. And so we get to sort of sidestep a matchup which would limit how much Kane produces. And I mean, yes. Let Kane play when the Crosbys and the Kopitars and, the scary motherfuckers from other teams are nowhere to be found. And let's see. Go Sharks.
Yeah, I agree. This has been another Circling the Cup podcast. Hopefully Alex will be back with us next week so that we have the full threesome going. You can always find us on the internets in multiple places. So on Facebook, we are facebook.com/Circling the Cup. If Twitter is your joint, then you can find me mostly tweeting there at Circling the Cup. You can find the podcast at circlingthecup.com, or you can wait for it to upload to iTunes overnight and listen to it on Saturday mornings there or on an Android phone. You know how to find podcasts. I don't have to tell you where to find us. You'll find us. So that's it for us this week. Thank you, Colin, for contributing to a great discussion. I'm Ben. Alex wasn't here. And go Sharks.
Go Sharks.
All right.